the biggest stressor is not knowing what you don't know when you're planning a wedding.
Thinking about wedding planning, sometimes, especially when you're planning a destination wedding, there's a lot of stress because everything is like an ocean away or a plane ride
Yeah.
away. And so, how do you have like any methods to help brides feel a bit less stressed during the planning process?
Yeah, absolutely. I pride myself in making like the planning process as stress-free as possible. I always have clients who are like, my friends keep on asking me if I'm stressed, and I keep on being like, no, should I be? And I'm like, yes, that's what I want to hear. But yeah, I can, attribute it to a few different things. I feel like one is just generally setting clients up for success from the beginning. So there's a few things that I do in order to accomplish that. One is we use wedding planning software to keep track of everything related to a client's project. So it's essentially like a digital wedding binder, and within it, there's our customized checklist for that couple with all the things that they're going to want to think about. It might be more than they even want to do for their wedding, but at least they know that they're not forgetting anything. There's a place for us to put all the details of the wedding day timeline in there, the guest list, and not just the guest list, but all the details, meal choices, food allergies, who needs a high chair, all of these things. There's a 2-scale layout schematic within it where we can create like the layout, and then it syncs with the guest list so we can do the seating chart later. There's also a place to save all of the vendor contracts and contact information. I think this is super helpful because if you've ever planned any event, you're having a million emails and it's hard to keep track of what documents are most up to date. And then just the budget. And I think having a conversation about the budget in the very beginning is like kind of the second thing. And my goal whenever I work with couples is to understand what their priorities are and what their goal budget is. And obviously there's some budget education involved with each couple. They don't always know how much things cost. And so I really do make a point of breaking it down by vendor section and all the things that I think they're going to need to accomplish their event, and really prioritizing their funds in areas that they care about most. And, maybe like recommending they skip things that they care about less, kind of helping guide them on the best way to allocate their funds. And so by setting them up with this aisle planner account and talking about the budget from the get-go, I think that really helps them outline the scope of their project and give them like goals for each vendor category that they're booking. So instead of just hoping that their budget's going to work out, they know like, hey, if I spend this much on this, I'll be on budget. So that's like one of our ways to really kind of help put our clients at ease. The other thing that I do, I don't know that other planners do this, but I like to break up the planning into phases. I like to think about like an order of operations. I've planned enough weddings at this point that I know it just makes sense to do some things before you do other things, because then you got to go back and redo those things if you did it in the wrong order. So I usually will kind of break the planning up into 3 different planning phases, and that way they're not having to worry about the whole project the entire time. They can just focus on one section of vendors and kind of knock those out, and then I'll give them like kind of the goal due date for that phase, and then they can move on to the next category. So I think the tendency is to get really excited about the decor, which can you blame them? That's the fun part. But I think it's better to focus on what I call foundations vendors first, like obviously figuring out your venue, thinking about food, because that's going to be one of your biggest costs. And then booking your photographer, videographer, music and entertainment, stylist, and officiant. And once you kind of get those squared away, then you can start transitioning into the design. And at that point, you've maybe spent a few months perusing Pinterest or Instagram, or kind of like honing in on what you really like. So just by breaking down into phases, I think that helps. And for me, I'm like constantly communicating with my clients, reiterating these steps. So I tell them I explain my phases in the consultation. When I set them up with the initial aisle planner count and the budget, I reiterate we're going to focus on foundations vendors first. Here they are listed in the checklist. We're going to spend this amount of time on it, and then I will reach out to you when it's time to work on this. And then as we reach each phase, I send them like a summary email kind of breaking down what that phase looks like and linking to all sorts of resources. I have a blog post or a blog where I've written all sorts of blog posts to support these tasks. This is how I spent COVID shutdown, is writing blog posts. I'm like, what are all the things you'll ask me all the time? And then that way they're just like constantly being assured that they are where they need to be in the scope of planning, and they're not worrying if they're missing anything. I think the biggest stressor is not knowing what you don't know when you're planning a wedding. That makes sense. Yeah. And then I think the final thing that we do that really helps put our clients at ease is like in the design part and our floral design as well. We create these style boards, and just having visuals for this part of the wedding is super helpful in gaining our clients' trust and confidence. Because if they can see a picture and be like, yes, that is what I want, we are on the same page, then they don't have to just wonder if it's going to look like they want it to when they show up on the wedding day. If that makes sense. So those are kind of our key ways of just helping the clients feel less stress.
Sounds amazing. That actually sounds really awesome.